I've been working for one of the best sports companies in the world, so with Adidas, and started as an intern actually at Adidas New Zealand 23 years ago. 27 countries from New Zealand now, which is nice to be all the way through, I guess, the bottom half of the world, and then up into the Caucasus regions around the former CIS. Actually, in emerging markets, we have an award called the Courageous Failure Award. We like to encourage people to get after things and try
Yeah.
things, and even if it fails, you've had a go at it. We lost 5-0, but they had 25 shots on goal. So out of miraculous, I got the MVP award. I still have the trophy. When I stopped playing football, I went cold turkey, stopped playing altogether. I literally sat there one evening at home in my apartment in Germany and went, okay, so what do normal people do? It's about women's sport and in general, and shown hopefully being start a butterfly movement. I call it the butterfly
Yeah.
effect.
Rachel, welcome to the Second Wind Academy podcast. It's great to have you on here today.
Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate the invite. It's been a long time coming, I guess.
It has, which means that it's going to be an even better show. Because now we've built up the anticipation ourselves.
Right.
But
No pressure.
no pressure, none at all, none at all. Well, look, as I think I nearly always start the shows with saying how much I'm looking forward to the conversation, and I think I do have. Well, I know I have a genuine interest in understanding that career journey, and for you, really, I think fantastic in the sense of coming from a sport I, of course, love in football as well, but then also how you have traveled the world and you're with a brand that I certainly admire and sort of wear myself. So those are three absolutely wonderful things. Hence, I'm looking forward to stepping into how you've got to the room, to where you are today. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks for wearing the brand.
Yeah.
Helps keep me in a job. So appreciate it.
Yeah. Anytime.
Yeah.
Absolutely. um, well, look, Rachel, for those listening and watching who are like, okay, Rachel Howard, they may have heard from you previously. Just let everyone know, who are you and what are you up to nowadays?
Yeah, sure. So I think first and foremost, the most important thing that I say about myself is that I'm a Kiwi, so a New Zealander who is a citizen of the world, who's happened to have a fantastic life, I guess, not even, I wouldn't say career, but life in terms of being able to play football for my country, represent New Zealand, play professionally, never paid like a professional. And I think we'll talk a bit about that in Germany in the first division in the women's Bundesliga. So that was amazing. And while I've been doing all of that, I've been working for one of the best sports companies in the world, so with Adidas, and started as an intern actually at Adidas New Zealand 23 years ago, which makes me sound a lot older than I like to admit. And then since then, I've been traveling around the world. I tell everyone Adidas is paying for my world tour. I just happen to work along the way. And really, yeah, it's been an amazing journey to get where I am today, which is in Dubai. And I'm currently the VP for brand for emerging markets, which covers a very vast and interesting region. So it's around 127 countries, all the way from New Zealand now, which is nice to be have my home country part of the region I'm working in, all the way through, I guess, the bottom half of the world, and then up into the Caucasus regions around the former CIS markets. So that's what keeps me busy on a day to day, and up until December, and then January I'll be moving actually down to Melbourne to take on a new role with Adidas, which I'm very excited about, which is to be the general manager of Adidas Pacific.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
quite an amazing. Well, actually, quite an amazing story from, be it football, internship, 23 years in one organization and counting. is rare. Yeah, it's definitely rare. Yeah, hopefully. But yeah, so that even that is super interesting. You mentioned two roles there. One that you're in today, and one that you're moving in onto. Um, just talk to me a bit about what you mean by your current role, VP of Brands and Emerging Markets. There seems like a lot of, well, to me, complexities that sit within that job.
Yeah, complex, and friends of mine joke that I'm the vice president of the coloring in department because marketing, all we do is make pretty pictures and
Yeah.
social media these days. But um, it does have its complexities. So, for example, what I'm officially responsible for is my teams work on the product selection from our Adidas range globally. We have thousands of products that we make for each season. That works for every 6 months. And then my team's responsible for one, selecting those products for the countries in our region. Then we're also responsible for making sure that we sell them. So the marketing side of things as well, covering everything from sports sponsorships all the way through to media, social media, and our in-store communications as well. So quite varied. And the fun of the job is there's never 2 days the same. Absolutely not. Especially the region we live in. And then, of course, with the emerging markets, unfortunately, at the minute, we are the region that has the two world's biggest conflicts that are going on between Russia and Ukraine is one. Then, obviously, the Middle East situation with Israel. So that means also we have a responsibility to protect the brand, and as part of that is, of course, most importantly, is protecting our people across the region who either are consumers or part of our brand as well.
Wow. Yeah, I guess it's interesting you actually talk about the human side of things. I suppose in asking the question, my focus was very much, I suppose, on the tasks or the job in
Mm-hmm.
itself. What you've also identified there, again, is the human, is the people.
Yeah.
Is that something, that focus or that awareness of running teams and and how individuals are actually just living their life, is that something that has grown as you've gone through your career?
Absolutely. If you start as an intern, you're luckily, hopefully, managing to get yourself to work on time because you're quite young in that process. And throughout my career, of course, more responsibility you take on and part of that is leadership. And for example, I was leading a team in Russia, so I was in the head of marketing there for 3 years. I had a team of 120 people.
Mm,
And when the war broke out, obviously the amount of impact that had on my team, and how do I manage through that? So that's one. Here in my current role, I have an immediate team for my regional team, which is around 90. But across the region in marketing, we have probably close to 300 people. So that influence and leadership is super important. And I guess one thing I would add to that is the cultural element as well. So
mhm,
leading different cultures. Even now within my team, I have some Israelis, I have some people who are Lebanese, I have people who have Jordanian, and very strong links to Palestine. As a leader, how do you make sure that you're trying to create an environment where people feel safe, respected, and valued? And that's
mm,
probably where I spend most of my time now, is actually on the people side of things.
mm. Yeah, again, always interesting just to hear of, quite simply, the roles people are doing. I just find that I always remember as a young chap. So I'm raised in Leeds, in Yorkshire. I always remember going on a visit early. Probably I was a footballer actually, but walking through the streets of London, and I was amazed at how many people were there. And I was thinking, well, what are they all doing? And they're all having these jobs and things like that, and just the pure tasks. And it's, as I've come through I suppose, my career, even from a corporate perspective as well, it's been so much more aware of
Mhm.
that people side, that progress side, that motivation that we as individuals have as we, I guess, as we go into this world of work.
Yeah. Oh, it's yeah. I think it's, you said, I mean, I came from New Zealand and I've lived in Shanghai, I've lived in Moscow, which, basically 2 times the size of my country, or the district I lived in, Shanghai, was the same size as the population of New Zealand. So I hear you on the amount of people and what are they doing. Yeah, everybody's living. I think that's the best way to describe it. And how do you, as a leader, you have a moment in time where you're fortunate um, to be able to lead people or to have an influence in their life as part of their journey. And I always say there's nothing more rewarding now for me when I see people that I might have hired or have been interns or are moving through their careers, and knowing that you've had an opportunity to hopefully positively impact them. It's not always the case, but definitely, hopefully, positively impacting their career journey and helping them achieve what they'd like to do in life.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So fascinating. Let's actually go back to you in New Zealand, because where you are today, uh, well, a million's probably an over exaggeration just because of the size of the world, but you are thousands of miles away from where you started right now, and probably even that, we've just spoken that global citizen or global perspective that you now have. So for you, sort of growing up and with that and with sport, so where did sport come into your life as a sort of as a young lady growing up in New Zealand?
Yeah. I was very fortunate that both my parents were into sports, and neither one were. Well, my dad was, he played tennis to a reasonably high level in New Zealand, was New Zealand age group level, um, but just both of them were very active and into sports, and so they kind of instilled that, I guess, interest in it. And then as a young 5-year-old, I guess I had a lot of energy, so I remember my mum taking me along to my first football game. And that's how I really got involved in football. I know my dad played a little bit when he was younger. I think my mum would have loved that I played netball instead, but that wasn't the sport for me. I needed to have I had a little bit more energy that needed releasing than on a netball court.
Yes, that's actually quite funny. I can imagine you running across all of the lines and give it to me again, quick! I'm in. I'm open. I'm
Yeah.
open.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, so then for you, as you sort of progressed, and you finding then, well, in fact, how did you find an enjoyment or at least a love of football?
Yeah. That's a great question. I think, I mean, I love the sport itself, right? The passion, the energy, the skills that you learn with it. But I think it was a lot of it, and I think that's why I enjoy what I do today, is this team element of it, this camaraderie. One of my best friends, we played in the national team together, and that's how we met. So the opportunity to meet new people and just have fun. I mean, as a kid, you don't really think so much around, the tactical things, honeybees to a
Yeah.
pot
So
chasing the ball around. It's just
yeah,
that fun element of it. And it just always brought me a lot of joy. Even right up when I was playing professionally, um, it was the joy of playing and joy of meeting new people and sharing, I guess, a shared goal together with a group of people and trying to achieve that.
yeah. And so for you, as football sort of continued in your life, you developing this sort of super enjoyment of it. Back then, I'll just say back then, we don't need to put a date on it, but back then, um, what did you hope to accomplish in football?
Um, Look, I think it was around, I know back then, I know it was around, probably I was starting off at high school, because I remember sketching in an art book actually, around the idea of playing for the national team. And that was, I think I was around 12 or 13 when I actually learned there was a women's national
Right.
team.
Yeah.
And at the same time, the Sydney Olympics were coming up. And, it wasn't just football that I played as a kid growing up. I was playing cricket, tennis, any sort of physical activity. And generally, if there was a ball involved, I was generally trying to play the sport.
Yeah.
I dabbled in rugby for a while as well. So the idea of sports and the Olympics was always a big topic, especially with my dad, to be able to. I remember getting up as a kid. I think it was, I don't know where it was in the world, but I remember sitting there as like a little 7-year old or so, just putting water in my eyes to try keep myself awake at 3 a.m. in the morning to watch the Olympics, or watching the Wimbledon final when Chris Lewis played against John McEnroe. So these were important moments, and that passion for sports. So the idea of the Olympics was a big thing for me. And I actually stole a beer sign from somewhere. I think it was Heineken, on the sign, and then printed out on my mum's printer Sydney 2000, and stuck it onto the sign and stuck it above my window in my room. And I was like, I want to go to the Olympics, and of course, love to go to Sydney. And at that time, women's football wasn't even an Olympic sport, so I was just thinking, I just want to go. I don't care what sport it is.
Right.
And then obviously found my place playing football.
Yeah. Well, I love that. I love that dream. There's so many stories I hear with athletes on here of these sort of, I want to make it to the Olympics. Don't care what I do. I want to make it to World Championship. I want to do all of these things. And it's I guess the birth or the ignition of that fire that,
Yeah.
where that dream becomes really clear. So for you, when did you start to realize you were good at football?
Um, I think I think it was really around a similar time. I was around 13 or so. I was just old enough to be able to start playing women's football, because there was the age limit, and I'd been playing with the boys. And I'd learned there was a women's team. So a coach had seen me playing with the boys. He asked me to come and train with his women's team, even though I was too young. And they were trialing there was trials for my local regional team. It was under 19s. And at that stage, I wasn't a full-time goalkeeper. I was part-time goalkeeper, aspiring midfield player. And so I
Aren't
realized
aren't they all?
I was
Aren't
quite good.
all goalkeepers
Almost.
aspiring?
Yeah,
Yes,
we're the best strikers in the team.
yeah,
We're just
that's right.
under-recognized, and underutilized.
Yes,
The Yeah, I think so. I was around 14, and I trialed for the under 19s, and obviously competing against 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds for positions. And I actually ended up making the team as left midfield, which also was quite ironic, because I couldn't really kick with my left foot. I just noticed on the list that not many people had put themselves down for that position. And I just got out of the car to go do the trial, my mum said to me, "Don't be disappointed if you don't get in," which is like putting a little red flag in front of me. And I'm like, I'll show you. I
yeah,
went, okay, not many left midfielders. I'll try that. I got the
yeah,
team, and then I ended up playing right midfield anyway at the tournament. So there you go.
yeah. See,
Yeah.
again, it's so funny. What I love, what's so good about that one is it's that desire to get in, and anyway in, it's just get me on the field, and then the rest of it will work itself out if the talent's there.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And you can liken it to a career as well, right? A lot of people are always searching for, the perfect job and perfect company, but sometimes you just take what job you can, and then you go from there. Like my internship, I call myself intern 001 for Adidas New Zealand. I was their
Yeah,
first ever intern,
yeah,
and they said, look, we can't pay you a salary, but are you okay to be paid in product? Now, I'm not sure if that's legal these days, but as a young goalkeeper, when you're trying to buy goalkeeper gloves, which are super expensive, you're a
yeah,
student. So I'm like, yeah, I'm in.
yes,
Luckily, I had a part-time job as well that paid some bills, but um, that just taking that job. I mean,
yeah.
easily I could have gone, you're not paying me money. What? I'm not going to do that. But I saw it as an opportunity to be able to get in, and look where I am today.
Yeah. Well, I know we jump into that, but in that, when you took the role, the internship at Adidas, was it with the intention of being there for 23 years, or was it more, I'm going to get some great gloves here?
Yeah. No, it definitely wasn't the intention of being for 23 years. The intention was to get in there and learn about the sports industry, and try, I guess, get a full-time job out of it.
Yeah.
Um, like the internship was 12 weeks, and then afterwards they did put me on a temporary contract for nearly
Yeah.
a year. And I just hung around enough that eventually they're like, oh, okay, we better create a job for her. She's adding some value.
Still here.
And then I
She
got,
needs a pass.
yeah,
Yeah.
got a job. So
Well,
that's how it worked.
yeah, which is excellent. I really like that. I'm going to come back onto that. So, for you, recognizing you were good as a footballer, thinking, yeah, want to go Olympics in some shape or form. Um, Considering the professionalism of football back then, w- what did you have? I mean, did you have a plan? What did you think you were going to be able to achieve?
Yeah. I don't know if I had a plan per se. I knew that if I wanted to play the high quality football, and I went through all the representative levels in my region. I was playing in the senior women's team when I was 17, 18. And then in New Zealand, the best teams were playing in Auckland. So I made a decision to move to Auckland. One, to go to university, which I took a year off actually and worked, then went to university and then tried to trial or got into some of the best teams that playing in Auckland at that level, which then just the quality was better and your exposure. And because of that, I guess by a happy accident is how I ended up in the national team at 20 years old. Uh,
So, I mean, you say happy accident. I think there's a
yeah,
couple of bits getting you there. And as one of my old managers used to say, if you don't buy a ticket, you can't win the lottery. And so,
true.
in that view of making your own luck, you made the move to Auckland. You
Mhm.
consciously thought better quality of football, but then also from a university perspective, you could study. I'm curious, what did you study?
I studied marketing and accounting as a business degree.
Mhm.
Majored in marketing, scraped through in accounting. Yeah.
There you go. Can just about count, but it's all right. Excel solves a lot of that for us, so it's okay. Um, but when so with that move and with that belief, you then started moving through the squads. It sounds like it was quite a rapid uh, sort of escalation for you going through the teams.
Yeah.
So, but you got yourself in the right place at the right time. Talk to me about what that lucky circumstances are for you in that regard.
Yeah. So I was playing when I was in my hometown. I actually made the New Zealand schoolgirls and New Zealand under 19s, under 20s. So that already put me on the radar from a national perspective. But then moving to Auckland, what I mean by happy accidents is I was playing with some of the top clubs, and there was two other goalkeepers who were playing for the national team. One of them is actually my good friend from school. We both went to the same high school, so she was the goalkeeper, and she was also a white fern, so actually playing cricket for New Zealand as well. So she made the decision to play cricket for New Zealand, which meant she stepped away. The number two goalkeeper had her first pregnancy and so was pregnant with her first child,
Yeah.
which meant at 19, 20 years old, I was number three on the list and then got selected for the team. So um, I guess unexpected, I would say, looking at back in my career, maybe a little bit early, but you take what you can get, and I wouldn't change my career in terms of that.
No, no, it is. You know, I think we often forget how important luck is, or
Mhm.
circumstance
Absolutely.
in actually in any career, be it on field or off field. And we can probably think of other examples where post football, a lot of it is just, well, they made that decision, that meant this happened, and next thing I knew, this was the opportunity. At that moment, did you feel ready? Though, how ready did you feel to step in as the national goalkeeper?
Uh, uh, it's hard to think now, but I'm trying to remember the feelings. I definitely was petrified at some point. Of course, very excited about the opportunity to be able to represent your country, and of course, all the feelings that go with that. But also being a 20-year-old goalkeeper, goalkeepers, you can be the heroes or the villains.
Yeah,
And I certainly been both in my football career. Um, and we went on our first tour, and I ended up playing my first, let's say, my debut game for New Zealand against the US women's team in 1998, which is the year before they won their first World Cup, the 99ers, which are quite famous. And literally, it was the same team.
Hmm.
So yeah, we lost. Not surprisingly, we lost 5-0. But they had 25 shots on goal. So out of miraculous, I got the MVP award. I still have the trophy. I've carried it with me around the world.
As you should.
The MVP award, but it's also the first time I realized there's a massive difference in terms of the investment and interest in women's football in New Zealand versus the US. When Mia Hamm, and I'm sure that's the name a lot of people know from women's football in the US, when she gets given a Corvette at halftime for Player of the Year, and yeah, where literally everyone in my team was either taking vacation or unpaid leave to be able
Mm.
to play for the national team. We didn't receive allowances while we were traveling or anything like that. You realize there was a bit of a different world out there.
Yeah. Do you know, well, my first question was going to be, so did Mia Hamm score against you? That was one. And
Yeah.
yeah, and then even better than that, you must have saved some shots from Mia Hamm as well. So that's probably the bit that's
uh,
what
I
VP.
think so. Yeah, it was a bit of a blur. The US men's team were playing after us, and so by the end of the game, there was a bit of a crowd behind the goal.
Yeah. Okay.
And all I quite often remember is hearing Howard, you suck from behind the goal. So yeah, that was really encouraging.
Yeah.
One of the memories of that game. Yeah,
Yeah, that's just there you go. That's quite funny. The pleasures of being a goalkeeper at the away end. That's it.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Do you know, I also interesting is the difference that disparity or the gap you talk about between the New Zealand women and the American women national football teams,
Mhm.
and I think about well, I guess documentaries and everything on the disparity between the women's American team and the men's teams and sort of men's football or soccer in general. So even that just sort of helps to paint a picture as to, like you say, the sacrifice or decisions that you had to make as a player, a dual career athlete, to make your way out there as well, or certainly the teammates did.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when you think then of coming back to that time, I'm interested in your balance at this moment. So university and playing at the same time, and then, well, I guess trying to figure out the world of work. Did you consider, or to what extent did becoming a full-time paid footballer start to become a reality to you?
Um, I think the idea of it became a reality actually once I moved to Germany,
Mhm.
because I was playing obviously in a league where there were full time players. My best friend who was playing in the national team. She had also moved to Germany and was being paid to play. I would say at that stage it was being paid enough to live, certainly not enough to make a retire on for sure.
Yeah.
But for me myself, I've never played full time as a professional, so I often get the question like, "Oh, when if you've been working for Adidas for 23 years, when did you stop playing football?" And I'm like, "How old do you think I am?" So in reality, I was always doing both,
Mm.
and which
Yeah.
is especially for my generation, and is still for a lot of women today in sports. You were doing both. You were working, or you were studying, or and you were playing the sport that you loved and trying your best to excel at it.
Mhm. Yeah. So for you, how did you get the internship? So, well, I'm not sure if that was your first experience. I should go back and make sure everyone's with us in this sort of timeline. Um,
Yeah.
what was your first then working experience?
Yeah. So when I moved to Auckland to play football, I took a year off from university and I actually worked in a bank in New Zealand. I did that for a year, but I think about 6 months in, I looked to my left, saw my bank manager, who was probably about my age that I am today, looked to my right, there was a lady who was a bit older, and I'm like, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. And that's when I decided to go to university to study business. And then that's how the internship came about. Is we had to find an internship as part of the degree to complete the degree. So I just sent my CVs to all the sports companies in New Zealand. I was, super innovative in the 90s. I burned my CV to a CD disc, printed out a cover to put into it, and then
Yeah.
sent it out. And I was fortunate enough to hear back from Adidas. They were the only ones that came back to me, so I was pretty excited to be able to go in and
Yeah.
at least try get an internship with them.
Yeah, that's pretty good. So I just have to ask, you put your resume onto the CD, so they would pick up the
Yeah,
CD, put that in the computer, and be able to see it.
exactly.
Oh
Yeah,
wow,
you know,
God,
yeah,
taking me back.
innovation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it. Yeah, everyone, half the group are listening, saying, "What do you mean post? What do you mean?" It's like, no, it's not an email. It was,
Yeah? What's a CD? Yeah, yeah,
yeah. God, that's good. So anyway, they came back to you, and well, I guess that's to an extent where some of the magic began. But you were then playing, and you said at the end of your internship, they then offered you a role. What was the internship doing, and what role did you get offered afterwards?
yeah. So the internship, I was working for the market, the woman Tonya, who was heading up marketing, and then I was working for two product managers as well as supporting on the All Blacks brand manager. So Adidas had signed the All Blacks in 1999. And so I was fortunate enough to be able to do some of that work. So as an intern, I was just basically doing everything. One of my first jobs in my first week was actually going to a photo shoot, and there was a very famous rugby player in New Zealand called Jonah Lomu at the time.
Yes.
And my job was to put baby oil on him for a photo shoot. So um,
Uh,
some interesting parts of
yeah.
the career, but yeah, that's how I started. And then obviously I got to know him,
Yeah.
and that was actually quite, I'd say, one of the special things I've been able to do with this career.
Well, yeah.
Um,
Well, there's what an amazing story. That that is an internship story of the ages. I'll give it that. Amazing was John
yeah.
Alomu. The best,
Yes.
yeah, oiling him up ready for a photo shoot is definitely random. One of the more random aspects I'd expect. Um,
Yeah.
any marketing intern. There we go. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I don't know if these days it would be if there would be any HR violations or anything from that respect, but that's what we needed to do back then, and so we did it. Yeah.
that's it. And the fact that you were getting paid in goalkeeping gloves, even better. Um,
Yeah. Exactly.
so then, what role did you then move on to from that internship?
Yeah. So from the internship, I kind of still was a marketing assistant, but then I also took over responsibilities for we call ranging the products for rugby. So I was making sure we got at that time we sponsored Super Rugby in New Zealand as well. So working with all the super teams, and making sure we got all the product into the country that we needed for them to play, and then for obviously Adidas to be able to sell to all the fans that we had.
Yeah. When you look back at that role, how much did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I loved it. I mean, the fact, I mean, there's so many great stories of when you get to work with the All Blacks and everything. And of course, the All Blacks are the national icon, right, in New Zealand. And when you're driving the company car and you see one of the All Blacks waving to you as you're driving down the street, you're like, okay, that's a whole different experience.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was really enjoyable. It was again so much variety. I'd be at photo shoots, I'd be ranging product. I would be working with the NZR on what's the next designs for the All Black jersey. That was the time when tight fitted jerseys were becoming the thing in
Coming in.
rugby, and
Yeah.
the All Blacks, yeah. And we had a few jerseys rip in a few games, so I was taking jerseys off. I was having fun playing rugby a little bit as well, and take the jerseys to my girls' rugby training, and literally
Yeah.
we're trying to have 3 or 4 girls trying to rip a jersey off somebody to see if we can make sure the next ones don't rip.
Yeah. Yeah.
While Sonny Bill Williams is wearing a jersey, even though half of New Zealand was very happy about that. The other
Yeah.
half probably not so.
Yeah. Do you know, it's funny, I remember at that time, New Zealand, I was working part-time football, and I was working in a hotel in Leeds, and the All Blacks were staying. So 2000, 2001, something in around that time. And I just remember I had to go up in the lift. I would have been, don't know,
Yeah.
doing room service or something. And I think there's probably only two, maybe three players in the lift. And it's like, I, I couldn't get in. They
Not
just,
much room.
yeah, consumed the whole thing. But yeah, so I know the time and the kits and things like that that you'd have certainly been working through as well. So, and look, so during this time, you're playing. You are aiming to qualify for World Cups. Olympics start to become a possibility for you. How did you manage, if anything, mentally, this, hey, I'm really enjoying my job, hey, I'm really enjoying football? How did you
Yeah.
find that process?
Yeah. Um, at that time, so it was a bit later in my career. The first time we went to the World Cup was in 2007. And that would have been the first time New Zealand had qualified. So by that stage, I was living and working in Germany. So
Oh, right.
from that point of view, I was so actually in Germany, I was working with Adidas, of course, and I was doing rugby and worked in football. So I
Yes.
was had the all of this. So literally, my life looked like a get up at 6, go to the Adidas gym, train in the morning, work through till 5:30, and then my club team was about 100 kilometers away from where we worked. So
Remember
three
now.
times per
Yes.
week,
Yeah.
jumping in a car, driving, training, get back at 11 p.m. in the evening, and eat, sleep, repeat. So that was kind of in Germany. And then to be able to make the New Zealand team, I was videoing games because we had a new coach to send the games back, as well as we would travel back to New Zealand for training camps. And when you live in Germany, you're
Hmm.
not flown business class back. You tend to fly all the cheapest routes, so there's quite a few stops on the way,
Yeah.
and then end up back in New Zealand for training camps. So that's kind of how life looked like. From a mental point of view, actually, I mean, it was tiring, but you get used to the rhythm of
Mhm.
everything. And I got so used to it actually when I stopped playing football, which is also when I was in Germany.
Mm.
I went cold turkey, and I mean, I stopped playing altogether. I literally sat there one evening at home in my apartment in Germany. Went, okay, so what do normal people do? Because in the evenings, because I was just so used to this rhythm.
Yeah.
And ironically, after 6 months, I went back and played at a much lower level for
Yes.
fun. But yeah, just that going cold turkey is something that I probably wouldn't recommend anybody doing if you've been doing so much for so
Yeah.
long.
Well, yeah. Suddenly you're not doing well. Just quite simply the training and the purpose,
Yeah,
the
exactly.
purposefulness of the training drops away. So
Yeah.
you know, um, well, I assume you must have just, well, either you starved yourself or you put on about 5 kilos in a couple of weeks, and it's like, what on earth is this? Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed a glass or two of more of red wine more than I did previously, for sure,
Yeah.
without the training regime. And my German got immensely better from watching German soap operas in the evening.
Yeah, yeah, I could imagine.
Yeah.
I know when I, it's odd though, when I played in France, I think, well, actually, I suppose certain parts of my vocabulary would have improved when playing football on the
Yeah.
field with the players and things like that. But yes, TV probably gave it a broader or more balanced vocabulary, perhaps, when that's more appropriate.
Yeah. Probably more articulate, maybe as well. Less
Yes,
choice words.
yeah, yeah, yes, I would say so, something like that. Um,
Yeah.
so look for you then. That decision, I suppose, what was the decision that led you to think, okay, I'm going to stop playing now. I've
Yeah.
done enough. When was that?
Um, I don't know. Psychologically, I always had in my head somewhere around 30 was probably the time that I wanted to retire. I was fortunate. I mean, I had injuries in my career, but nothing serious that was career ending. So, from a physical point of view, um, nothing major. I just remember being at training one time. with my club team, which was the middle of winter in Germany. So I think it was 2 or 3 degrees. Snow had come down. It was packed ice, and we trained on artificial turf. And as a goalkeeper, shooting practice, that takes a lot out of your body. I
Yeah.
just remember picking myself up the ground at one point and going, "Yeah, okay, enough is enough now." And that's when I went, "Okay, I'm not enjoying this as much
Mhm.
anymore." And as I said, when I was a kid, all the way through, it was about the enjoyment of football and just be able to do that and enjoy what I'm doing. And if I wasn't enjoying it anymore and I was putting so much time and effort into it, I wasn't going to be in the best place for the team, which is unfair on the team. And also for myself, from a mental perspective, if it becomes a grind, then why are you doing it anymore? So
Yeah.
that's kind of where I decided to retire, which I was lucky enough to be able to go to the Olympic Games in 2008, be part of the team. And then I already knew that after the Olympics, that was when I would put the gloves in a box and say, okay, it's time
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, you spoke then about going cold turkey in terms of football after that.
Yeah.
What happened career, what, job wise? What sort of
Yeah.
shift did you see there, with yourself in the office?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because, as we talked about all through my career, I was either at school, part-time job, playing football, um, working, playing football, and then suddenly just I had work. Um, so I love what I do. I guess I put a lot more passion into this, and this is where I get my enjoyment and
Mhm.
my sense of purpose as well as sense of achievement in a lot of things. So, I'd started, I wouldn't say I put a huge amount of hours. There has been times in my career where it has been quite stressful and a lot of hours I put into the job, but I kind of put all my efforts into this. And then also,
Mm.
I guess my football team now is my team that I work with on a day-to-day basis, that we go through things together.
Mhm.
So yeah, I put a lot more effort into work in that respect. Yeah.
Yeah, and look, you talk about that balance before. You were used to managing, playing career, work, study, and the travel, and even did that I'll say that mental shift as you switch
Mhm.
between I'm a goalkeeper. Hi, it's Ryan Gonsalves here. Thanks for tuning in today. I just want to take a moment to ask you an important favor. To help grow this channel, one thing will do that above more than anything else. Please hit that subscribe button. By hitting that subscribe button, you help me to grow the channel, allowing me to create more tailored content, improving the quality, and also to develop additional services such as the workshops, one-on-one sessions specifically designed to support elite athletes in that difficult transition to that career beyond sport. So if you want to join me on this journey to help inspire, guide, and connect individuals to find their second wind, please hit that subscribe button. As a goalkeeper, I suppose what type of goalkeeper were you, in the sense I'm trying to think, how did you go from that shifting communication style that you'd have as an on-field player, and how do you a goalkeeper, how
Yeah.
how do you bring that into sort of this work environment?
Yeah. Um, Look, I think being a goalkeeper, if you think about it, most people see you as the last line of defense, which is true. Um, but often you're the first line of attack because you're the one who starts off with the position of the ball. But you need to be a very good communicator to be able to instruct players. Often they can't see things, and it's your responsibility to be able to help them and instruct them. And you need to be pretty clear and precise, and you need to try and stay calm under pressure. The other thing I would say is, because you can see the whole field, you get quite good at reading the game, and reading body language and the way that people, different moves and how you see the game. So I think that helps me immensely in what I do as a leader today. I see myself as, the last form of defense for the team if there's high risk, but also the first form of attack to go, okay, these are the opportunities. How do we get after these things? As well as clear communication, staying calm under pressure, be able to try and anticipate things before they happen based on your
Yeah.
experience that you have and you've been through things before. And of course, as I said, you can either be
Mm.
the hero or the villain. You try to be inspirational and aspirational as a leader, and so that hero element of trying to lead the team and help them grow and develop is important as well.
And one of the things that I've always seen in the goalkeepers is that letting a goal, make a mistake,
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
know, the spotlight is on them as that
Mhm.
individual, and then having to overcome it and carry on for the, you know, it could be in the first minute you make the mistake and you've got another 8 to 9 minutes
Yeah.
to go, or part of a tournament. When you think of your career at Adidas as well, you know, how have you had, or to what extent have you had moments like that where, well,
Mhm.
might not necessarily be an own goal, but you've
Yeah.
had those challenges and you've had to sort of come back? Is that
Yeah.
something that you've had to witness or go through yourself?
Yeah, I have. So I think to your point around resilience, as a goalkeeper, I was recently with the move to Australia. I was addressing the whole team, the new team down there, and we talk about agility, resilience, and actually in emerging markets, we have an award called the Courageous Failure Award. So
Okay.
we like to encourage people to get after things and try
Yeah.
things, and even if it fails, you've had a go at it. So I said, as a goalkeeper for the New Zealand national team, our world rankings around 20th in the world, I think 20 to 25th in the world. You you learn resilience because more often than not, you are picking the ball up out of the back of the net in
Yeah.
quite a few games, especially when I was playing. The team is much better now. So that's part of it. And so from a resilience perspective, you learn that. And for me personally, in my career, actually, when I was in Hong Kong, I was the brand director there, and I had a 3-year contract. 2.5 years, or just before my 3-year contract was at its end, I got taken for a coffee by my boss and said, "Look, we're not going to renew your contract." Now, there's a long story behind all of it, but essentially, yeah, I was told that I'm no longer needed. And in the same conversation, asked if I knew anybody who would be a good successor for me, which was quite an
Wow.
interesting conversation. And you
Yeah.
learn a lot. You learn everything from people, what not to do as well
Mhm.
is important. But physically, I felt I was devastated. I never thought I would be in a situation where anywhere in my career, Adidas, that they would say to me, thank you, but no thank you. It physically felt like I'm being hit by a bus. Emotionally, it was very tough to be able to go through it. I had some very good support, fortunately, through a few friends who helped me through the situation. Um, and so dealing with that, and I try to explain to people, especially young people who join our company here, they look at my career and go, "Oh my God, it's amazing. Everything was shiny and bright." And
Mhm.
I'm like, "No, there's definitely been some tough times." And the point where literally I was asked to leave the company. Um, and then I was able to find a different role in the organization with different leadership,
Yeah.
which then has helped me to be where I am today. So I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah. That resilience, you know, is necessary in sport. It's certainly necessary after sport. What's really insightful there is when you talk about those people who look at your career, who read it, you know,
Mhm.
chronologically, and you're right, it would just be amazing. It's like role after role and more experience
Mhm.
and these types of things coming through. But as you say, when you look into it, there are the moments where you've had to overcome, you know, different challenges that people just might not be
Yeah.
aware of.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talked earlier about my TED talk. I
Yeah.
actually gave that TED talk 4 days after that conversation. So
Oh, really?
having to, yeah, having to turn up to commitments and be able to deliver what I was, asked to do. That's
Yeah.
also part of it, right? We all have stuff going on, but as a leader or you're representing your company at something, sometimes you just have to learn how to pick yourself up and keep going.
Yes. That was a good TED talk. Now I'm going to have to rewatch it with that context
Yeah.
of the conversation you had 4 days before. That makes it even more compelling. Um,
Mhm.
so now, one of the bits you mentioned there was this. You know, you just mentioned there you're in Hong Kong, you know, in Dubai, you've been in Germany. Back again to Australia. This, how do you get the courage to take roles overseas and do that? I mean, that takes a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I discussed this once with a colleague of mine, and I think for me, my comfort zone is going and exploring new things. And the security, ironically, I say this just after we talked about not having that security from Adidas, but my security in all those moves is I'm moving with Adidas. So that financial security, the support network has always been there. The other thing is, and this is when I made my first move from New Zealand to Germany, I was 26 years old at the time. And I had friends say to me, what happens if if it all goes wrong? And I'm like, well, if it all goes wrong, I can just come home.
Mm.
And so I'm very fortunate that I have a very, my parents, my mom is very supportive. I call her my hero, in terms of how she's helped me grow and develop. Um, but she gave me the key to the house when I left New Zealand and said, you can always come home if it doesn't work out. Now she lives in a different house now, but I still have a key to the original one, so I don't know if they'd be happy if I turned up. But yeah, that safety has been there, and that support from my family.
Yeah, and it is one of those that having that environment, that comfortable environment, kind of gives you an energy, like the sort of elastic band theory, where you can just stretch it, but you always know, well, I have a place that I can go back to,
Yeah.
and it's having people create that for you. And it sounds like Adidas as an organization has done that for you. And I don't, I suppose I'm not sure what the question is that's formulating in my head, but it's something around what is it? What is it about the Adidas culture that gives you that sense of home or sense of security?
I think the one thing that you hear about, and I talk to a lot of new people coming into our organization, that they love about the company is the fact that we just really care about people. And I think a good example of that is during COVID, and even in Russia at the time I was there with the leadership team, is we collectively all took a reduction in our salaries so that everyone could still stay employed. Um, we didn't do any mass layoffs during COVID. We're always trying to find ways to make sure that we look after people. And I know in different companies in our industry may not have the same approach. So that's, I think, one of the great things about working here for sure. It's that people first mentality. And then I always say, if you can't work in the sports industry and have fun, um, you know, you get to go to amazing sports events, you get to meet, athletes, you get to travel the world and do lots of interesting things. And, we sell t-shirts, sneakers and socks
Yes.
to athletes and people around the world. So I think we definitely have that fun element, and especially here in emerging markets, we definitely like to have our fun for sure.
Yeah. Brilliant, brilliant. And again, it sounds like finding that environment where you felt like an individual, a person. But
Yeah.
it does sound like there's that sense of fun and sense of enjoyment that really comes from it. I know there'll be those listening thinking, yes, this is the right type of environment that I'm going to want to be
Yeah.
in. Before you got into Adidas, so you as an intern came in, sport brand and feeling there. Um, what clues do you think people what would we see from outside Adidas to enable us to think that would be a good place to work? And the reason I ask that question is for those who are listening, they're going to be thinking, yeah, what type of work environment should I go? What should I look for in a company that helps me to understand that's a place where I should go and do any job, be it left midfield, left back, right wing, whatever it is. Just getting in there is probably the most important thing rather than the role that I do. What are the clues that you think people could look for?
I think, we talk about our communications and the athletes that we work with. I think you look, we take Messi versus a Ronaldo, for example. I think that's already a really big clue about who we are as a brand. You know, Messi's more humble as an athlete, but high achieving, the quiet leadership. So that already leaves clues on who we sponsor and we work with. David Beckham's probably another great example there in terms of where he's grown in his career, and the fact that we're still with David Beckham today.
Yeah.
You know, we signed him when he was a 14-year-old kid, and now
Yeah.
he's obviously in his further in his career. But that the athletes want to stay with us for a long time means that they feel that they're treated well. So I think that's always a good way. The All Blacks is a 25-year relationship as well. So these values that come together. So I think that's definitely one, a key clue, and it's the most visible one. I think if you're outside looking in. I think the other one is if you go through and read a corporate media and press about the company, it's not always smooth. We've definitely had our bumps, especially in the last few years, with different partners we've worked with. But you'll see around people and the corporate side of things. Like I said, you don't see mass layoffs coming from Adidas in terms of as a company, how we look at things. And then I think outside looking in, if you just go talk to some of our employees or even ex-employees of Adidas, we're all still friends in some way. So I might not see somebody for 10 years who used to work at Adi, bump into them walking down the street, and you're like, oh, I haven't seen you forever. And it's, that kind of camaraderie. So I think those are all good clues about the company.
Yeah. That's good. Thank you. It is always useful to, I speak a lot to athletes when they're trying to find that next career and where they want to go next. Is very much, well, yeah, think about what you value as an individual. So, how do you want to live that life? But then look at the environment that you want to operate in and look for those clues around communication and style and motivation. And then, of course, that leader who you work for. And it sounds like you would probably resonate or, with that sort of sentiment as well.
Yeah, and the company values, I think, are important. If you go back to how we started as a company, Eddie Dazzler is a cobbler in a small town in Germany, and we have Eddie Dazzler's standards. There's 30 of them, and the one that we always refer to a lot is always the best for the athlete, and the athlete, that also is from a people perspective as well. And I resonate with the company values around authenticity, and the fact I talk about this a lot in my job and what we do for the brand. And I like the connection with the All Blacks is, the All Blacks is the jersey. It's about leaving the jersey in a better place when you play, and that the mana that goes with that. The same from an Adidas perspective, our responsibility or my responsibility is to leave my brand when I'm responsible for it in this region, hopefully leave it in a better place by the end of the year. And then also my team, to make sure the team's in a better place, whether that's around psychological safety, around people just feeling a sense of belonging. I think I really see my role to provide that space where they feel that they're valued and they bring value to the organization each day.
That's great and wonderful. I like the way that value of leaving it in a better place works in that sporting environment, that sporting ethos about the number, the position, that you are, and how that links into a more traditional workforce role. And it's probably a good mantra to live by in general. But it's great how that is something that really does cut across sport as well. So that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Look, Rachel, I've held you for long enough. I know that, and but I suppose I've got a couple more questions just to go there. One is, for those listening, and I guess it's the guidance. It's from your perspective, and if you're thinking, looking at young athletes who want to get into sport, or in particular want to come in and work in an organisation like Adidas, while still playing or competing, what advice would you give to them?
The advice I would say is always ask the question, and the worst answer you'll ever get is no, and you're in no worse position than you are today. So be curious, put your hand up and say yes, which is what I've done in my career as well. There's not many people, I think, in Adidas who have worked in China, Russia, the Middle East. And so just the opportunities came up and to say yes. And if it doesn't work out, and hopefully you've got a good support network to be able to do that, but at least you've given it a go, and asked the question. And I guess the same philosophy for me as well. And now, as I'm beyond what I do on an everyday basis, and something we haven't touched on is I'm actually a co-owner in a women's professional basketball team in New Zealand.
Mm, right.
And this is something that's been happening for the last, I think, the last 2 months or so.
Okay. Yeah.
I got asked to join and invest in this team, and it's like a heart over head decision. And the idea was, yeah, let's give it a go. If it doesn't work out, we tried.
Yeah.
And so it's a new adventure, and that's helping me also as part of my career as well to grow and develop as being an owner and an investor in a sports team.
Yeah. Well, there you go. This was going to be my last question about, well, what is coming
Yeah,
next? And you've sort of
yeah,
um, helped answer that there with already pulling
yeah,
me in and saying, wow, well, head over
yeah,
heart. No, heart over head,
yeah,
I think you said.
yeah, yeah. It's yeah. It's I can elaborate a little bit more. So
Please. Yeah.
we understand, so we're 5 women who own the team. We've all invested in this, including the coach, to bring her in as part of this. The team's called the Northern Kahu basketball team. They play in the professional league in New Zealand. The league is runs from October to December, so it's a small league, small teams, but a really exciting opportunity. So we're owned by women, managed by women, and coached by women. We know we're definitely the first professional team in New Zealand to do this,
Yeah.
but we believe we're one of the first in the world as well, to be all in
Yeah.
that sphere. So, on what's next, general manager for Adidas Pacific, which is a new
Yeah.
exciting journey to come full circle from being an intern to now lead the organization,
Mm,
and trying to help women's sport improve to people that investing in women's sport. I
yeah.
wasn't able to do it in football, unfortunately, in New Zealand just yet. So I'll start with basketball, and my new passion,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
be able to show that there is a pathway for girls in professional sports, but also associated with professional sports, and ownership is a possibility.
Yeah. I mean, it is like you say, that full circle.
Oh,
It's not even a circle. It's because it's going to wiggle all around, but it's a shape and it's coming back round. Um,
exactly.
what makes about the basketball team? What is it about having the full female ownership and coaching and playing, having that all female? What do you think makes that so special?
One, it's never been done, of course, and two, the special side of it is I think we're in a tipping point moment, a special moment in time with women's sport. Having played women's sport all my life, going through everything I've gone through, we've talked about today, from having to work and play, um, facilities, you know, the disparity versus where we were, to be able to now to for us to be able to try lift that in New Zealand, and use New Zealand as a platform to show that it's not just about the Northern Kafu women's basketball team. It's not just about the league. It's about women's sport and general, and showing, hopefully being, start a butterfly movement. I call it the
Mm,
butterfly
yeah,
effect,
yeah,
to be able to show women and girls that it's possible. Um,
yeah,
we have great allyship, I think, with men, in the industry, and football's definitely benefit from that. But the opportunity to show that you can do this as a full women's team in an area which has always been traditionally male dominated in sports.
yeah,
Um, I think it's, yeah, we'll give it our best crack and see if we get it right, and we'll make mistakes along the way, but
yeah.
we're very positive about it.
That's great. No, and I say, definitely congratulations on that. You,
Thank you.
you're demonstrating it can be done. And I think
Yeah,
once that first piece is there, once that first brick is laid, then
hmm,
options. There are loads of other options that then occur, but it's like it can be done,
yeah.
and it will be done, right? So I think that is fantastic. And like I say, congrats on
Thank you.
being part of that first brick being laid. Um,
Yeah, that legacy, huh? Leaving the jersey in a better place.
That's right, absolutely. And look, and so Rachel, with that, I want to say thanks very much for taking out the time to share your story to where you are
Right.
today. Absolutely brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.